Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. Today we're going to talk with Brendan Kane, who wrote the book 1 Million Followers. And he actually created a following of 1 million people in 30 days. And so he's going to talk about how he did it. We're going to talk about some of the myths, misinformation that's out there. And he's going to bring some clarity to that, so that you can understand where you're at, how to grow a following, a meaningful following, and that has engagement and all of this. So I'm really excited to have him here. Brendan, welcome, Leaders of Transformation.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And a shout out to JV Crum III for making this introduction. JV has introduced me to some amazing people. He's got a fantastic podcast, Conscious Millionaire. If you haven't checked it out, definitely go check it out. So thank you to JV. So let's dive right in. So you wrote this book. You did this test, to see if you could do it, to create 1 million followers, and then you wrote this book. Why did you write this book to actually share your techniques that you used?
I think there's a few different reasons of why I wrote it. I mean, one of the primary reasons is I am really passionate about thought leadership and teaching people and inspiring people to take action. And the book was just a foundation to be able to do that more, to be able to share the information that I've learned over the past 15 years of doing this. And I do it through the form of speaking, books, podcast interviews, and all of that. So that's one of the drivers, the motivational drivers behind doing it. But also, I think in the way that I opened up the book is I firmly believe there's people all over the world that have the ability to transform it in a positive way. They're simply lacking the strategies or the tools or the know-how to get their message out, because we live in a world where there's literally 60 billion messages sent on digital platforms each day. And that means a lot of messages get lost. And I really want to help those people that have, whether it's a product or service, a piece of content, they could have a positive impact on the world, the ability to get it in front of the right people and really providing the experience that I have for myself, and also the top partners that I have in different facets of digital and social growth.
Got it. Now, you've worked with some pretty big names, Taylor Swift, some other people. And what do you notice that they do differently than everybody else does? So we're talking about, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of strategies, but somehow they're doing it in a different way, and you're helping them to do that.
Well, I think that one of the biggest things is having successful content and compelling content that people want to engage with. That is the key to success in this space. You talk about competing against all of the noise out there, competing against the algorithms, competing against other accounts. It comes down to, A, what does your content actually say? Is it compelling? And then B, just as importantly, is how are you saying it? Because some people could have really powerful content and have a really powerful video or a photo or a message, but if it's not structured in the right way, if it's not formatted in the right way, that plays to, first and foremost, how all the social algorithms work, you're not going to get the reach, you're not going to get the exposure. So you can have people, and I see it all the time, that are really brilliant people that have a tremendous voice. It's just not structured in a certain way that it can get through the noise and the clutter. So at a high level, the people that have success, first and foremost, do have a compelling message or content, but they're also structuring it in such a way that allows them to succeed. Now, some are doing that consciously, some are just doing it based on luck. But that's where I've seen a lot of success and a lot of our focus in helping people goes into.
Got it. Well, I know in your book, and I loved your book, by the way, and it's one of those books that is like, I need to go through this a few times to just really unpack it. And one of the things you talk about is the shareability. And I know there's this big infatuation with how many likes you have to a post, and people are starting to realize that it's not the likes, it's the comments, so then it's like, how can I get a whole bunch of people to comment? What's your favorite color? I don't see that too much anymore, but it used to be like, what's your favorite color? Where are you right now? Because they want people to comment. But what you talk about in the book is the importance of sharing and creating content that is shareable. Can you talk about some of the principles around that?
Yeah, and obviously it's And I think about sharing as a high level across social and digital platforms. Obviously, certain platforms like Facebook, sharing is the critical factor to reaching virality and scale. YouTube and Instagram, there's other factors that really contribute to scale. But at the end of the day, if you want to be successful in any facet of business or life, you want to get as many people talking about your brand, your product, your service, your content as possible. And that's really where exponential growth comes from. And one of the stories that I can tell that really impacted me to focus on shareability and focus on how to really do it at scale was when I started working with Taylor Swift and her team. Because early on in that process, when I started working with her, she was on the inflection point of like breaking out. She wasn't like the huge superstar she was today, but she was known. And what few people don't realize about Taylor Swift is that she built her fan base one by one. She didn't have a huge record label or millions of dollars of marketing budget behind her. And what made her so effective and brilliant is she understood the value and the power of fostering one-to-one communication with fans. She recognized that each time that she signed an autograph, took a photo with a fan, responded to a comment, that not only did that fan become somebody that was going to buy her concert tickets or merchandise or consume her music, it was now somebody that was becoming a brand advocate, somebody that was now willing to share her message, her content with the world. And because this was happening at a time where social media profiles were becoming an intricate part of everyday teenager life, it was not that these new brand advocates were just telling 3 to 4 of their closest friends around them. They were now posting to their social media profiles and sharing her content. And by doing that, with each post, they would reach sometimes hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people. And that's where that exponential growth came from, is that she built this army of brand advocates with each person wanting to share her message with the world. And that's where you see a lot of dramatic growth from individuals or brands or companies. Like I was reading an app or an article about TikTok, the app that originally started out as Musical.ly that just hit 1 billion users. And I think they started in like 2017. Is like, that's the level of scale that you can do if you can really get people behind your message. And when you just talk about shareability, why do people share things? Typically, people are sharing things for a few different reasons. They're sharing things because it emotionally moves them. It either makes them happy, it makes them sad, it makes them angry. You just think about the elections and political content and how much that content gets shared at a high velocity. You think about pet videos. People love to share that because it makes them feel an emotional way. There's also what's called social currency. People will share things because it reflects they feel that it reflects their level of intelligence, or it reflects that they're sharing a piece of information with people before others have seen it in their social circle. I would say that there's a really great book called by Jonah Berger. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but if you look up it's Contagious by Jonah Berger, where he basically studied virality for like 15 years, and he breaks down why people share things. And it comes down to those different factors. But I think that one of the areas that I always start with people in designing their content, and one of the biggest mistakes people make, is they're always thinking about what they want to say rather than what the other person wants to hear. And that's the best place to really start, is like, okay, what is that message that I'm going to put out there going to compel somebody to share it with somebody they know? And it's not going to be like, hey, go buy my product, go buy my book, go buy my sign up for my funnel or my email list. It's going to be something that's really providing a tremendous amount of value, moving them on an emotional level, or providing some unique insight that they want to then share with everybody they know.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I was going to ask you about this. So there's looking at and focusing on what other people want to hear, right? And then there is being true to yourself. And I noticed this even in myself originally when I was getting involved in social media. I mean, I was in sales and business before, so I kind of understood it's relationship marketing, right? It's just a different platform. And yet, in looking at posts and even getting feedback from people, they're saying, well, you should do this and you should do that. And they're basing it based on their own viewpoint and their own experience and what they like, right? And then there is what I'm passionate about sharing. And so it's, how do you make that connection and not go so far to be so concerned about what everybody else wants to see and be the people pleaser, if you will, to, try to crowd pleaser and still be true to yourself and make that connection, because then there's the other flip side of people that share the stuff that's really interesting to them and, or that they think is interesting, and then nobody responds, right? So it's like, how do you bridge this, this, yeah.
The way that I look at it is, I'm not suggesting that you change what you want to say. I'm suggesting you change the way you say it. Because again, when you're designing, when you have a message that you want to get out into the world, again, typically people are just thinking about what they want to accomplish, what they want to achieve with that message, not how the person on the other side of that screen is going to consume that message, be exposed to that message, engage with that message. And that's where people really run into trouble. I'm not saying that you have to change who you are or the content that you want to deliver. I'm saying that you should change the way you deliver that content to make sure that it really resonates and captures the attention of the people in the way that you want.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. It just, it's important, right? So we understand that how do you get that authentic voice and deliver it? And I love what you have there in the book. You talk about the different communications, the different personalities, how people, I love like the rebel and the harmonizer and the different personalities. Very, very interesting. Even for myself, like I understand personalities, so I would see it through that lens. Personality dynamics and so forth. But I love even just, it's like, wow, the harmonizers. I see how I naturally will write in a way that attracts harmonizers in my audience. And where I know somebody who used to tell me, you should do this and you should do that, but then he's a rebel. So that's what he's interested in seeing. And so he put a lot of comedy up there and a little bit of risque stuff. And, and he's like, you need more of that, but that's the audience. So it's very, very interesting. Now let's talk about 1 million followers. I'm sure our listeners are going, okay, Brandon, how did you do that? Right? Like 30 days is a very short period of time, and you're not buying them. These are legitimate followers, and you're doing it with quality content. So how did you structure your 30 days to do that? And even if it doesn't take somebody, let's say, reapplies it and it takes longer, but how did you structure that, your approach to that?
Yeah, so I mean, I've done it in as quick as 14 days for other people. And first and foremost, I just want to say not everybody needs 1 million followers, and I'm not suggesting that. And the book is really not. Listen, the book breaks down exactly how I generated 1 million followers, and I'll break down the process here too. But to me, the substance and the real education of the book is just the mindset and the process that you have to instill in yourself in order to be successful in this new world that you live in. Some people only need 50,000. Some people only need 20,000, 100,000. It's different for everybody. So I just first want to take the pressure off of, hey, I'm not saying everybody should have 1 million followers and do that. I want to say it's possible. It's definitely possible if that's what you want to go after. But like anything, it takes a tremendous amount of work and time and resources to do it. So when I did this, I mean, it's not like I just woke up one morning and just all of a sudden just did it. I had spent about 3 years building this, set of testing methodologies and processes to be able to test content at scale and really understand what it takes to get people to perform specific actions. So I started working with brands and corporations on it, and then I moved to celebrities and journalists and athletes. And then through that, I just thought, well, that's great that I can work with these top people in the world, but what about people starting from scratch, starting from zero? And that's where the experiment came from. And I initially did it on Facebook first, and then I recently developed another system for Instagram to drive massive growth, where we can generate upwards of, I think, like 200,000 followers in a single month on Instagram. And at a very high level, it's really all about testing content and testing content at scale to really learn and rapidly iterate what it takes to get somebody to perform a specific action. So when I did it for Facebook initially, the 1 million followers in 30 days, I had built a set of testing methodologies on top of the Facebook and Instagram advertising platform. And most people use it as an advertising tool or media buying tool, but it's very underestimated in its application for a market research tool, where you can literally use it to dynamically test any piece of content that you want at scale. So over the course of 30 days, I tested 5,000 variations of content. And that sounds like a crazy number. And people are thinking, yeah, that's insane. There's no way I have time to do that. I mean, I spent an hour and a half a day doing it. And I'm not saying I created 5,000 pieces of content. I created 5,000 variations of content. And when I mean a variation, there's 5 key elements to a variation. So the first part is the content itself, whether it's an image, a photo, a video, an article, whatever it is. Then you have the second, which is the headline. On Facebook, it goes above. Instagram, it goes below. The third is the demographics. What age and gender are you pushing it to? The fourth is the interest, like what types of products and services do they buy? What type of cars do they drive? What type of media do they consume? And then the fifth is the geolocation. So what that allows me to do is each one of these is interchangeable. So I can take one piece of content, change out the headline. That's a variation. Or I can change out, I want to target females. That changes, and so on. The interest, the geolocation. And what that allows me to do is every night at midnight, I would schedule between 50 to 300 variations of content. I would, for these tests, I would wake up in the morning, measure the results to see what had worked, what had not worked. The things that I did not work, I worked to understand what was it about it that failed. The things that did work, I would keep pushing and iterating off of that. And I would just do that process over and over again every single day over the course of 30 days to testing 5,000 variations, which led to generating 1 million followers in 100 countries in that time period. And basically what that allowed me to do was to really rapidly iterate and just see what happens in real time with content, is because you control all of these variables. You can see how a piece of content resonates with females versus males, versus people that are 18 to 30 versus 30 to 50. People that are interested in the Avengers versus people that are interested in the X-Men. Whatever you could think of, like, you could go out there and test. And then through that rapid iteration process, once you start learning, you get better as a content creator. And you have the ability to then tap into audiences that will then share your message and content for you at scale. So that's the way the process worked on Facebook. And the system for Instagram was a little bit different, because the way that we found a way, the tactic and strategy that we use to drive the most growth in the shortest time period is we syndicate content out onto other accounts and drive traffic back. Versus Facebook, you can push content out to audiences and they'll share out and you'll go exponentially. We've actually found the reverse for our strategies on Instagram. You syndicate content out onto other accounts and drive traffic back. So with Instagram, I created a system where I have a partner that has 3 million followers, and we'll test content on his account to see what the correlative effect of getting people to go back to my account or other accounts that we work with to click the follow button. And we'll just rapidly iterate to find content that works. And once we have found content that works, then we will syndicate it out onto more accounts. So we have a network of about 18 different accounts that we work with. So we'll syndicate that content out to drive back. I mean, we literally just did this yesterday, and in a single day, we generated 75,000 followers just doing that. Wow. So at a high level, it's really testing content and understanding what it takes to, again, get somebody to perform a specific action. And that, again, we're thinking about the other person on the other side of the screen of what's going to compel them, motivate them to go back, click the follow button.
And how do you take that? So our listeners are entrepreneurs, they have businesses, but they have, this passion to get their message out there. And there's so whether it's they might want to, sell a product or a service, or they want somebody to enroll or donate to a cause or something like that. They want them to take an action beyond following. So how do you take it from the online social media offline? What are some of the keys to doing that?
It's the exact same process. It's all about testing and learning. And we've used this same methodology for lead generation, for conversions, for traffic, for shareability. Whatever the key KPI is, you follow the same process. Is you have to create that infrastructure, and infrastructure is not the right word. you have to first create that mindset of what I'm talking about. So I break it down into 3 steps. You set a hypothesis, like what is that content, theme, format, or story you think is going to generate the intended response.
Mm-hmm.
The second phase is you test. You create a low-cost proof of concept that represents that hypothesis. And when I mean low cost, I mean low cost. I don't want you spending a ton of money in any direction until it's proven. And then the third is you analyze the data. Did it generate the results you were looking for? If it didn't, you start over again. You set a new hypothesis. You test. You pivot. And you keep doing that until you find something that works. And then when you find something that works, then you scale it. And it's literally, that's the 3 steps you have to follow. The hard part is just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. Where most people will just keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect all of a sudden something to go viral, or all of a sudden to lead to an offline transaction or to a conversion or a lead. And they just keep doing the same stuff. And that's where that iterative process comes in, to really test and learn to figure out what it really takes to get somebody to perform a specific action. And that's where the hard work is. And that is where the success lies. And again, those 3 steps, you could go through it 100 times, 500 times, 1,000 times to find out what works. And those are the people that are successful in this world that we live in today. So the exact thing that I did for followers, we use for everything else. We use it for every type of interaction that we want to have with potential customers.
So what really, like for you, and thank you for articulating that. And I know sometimes, like for you, it's easy, or
it's not easy.
easier.
Let me just stop you there. It's not easy. Like it is not.
Yeah,
it is not,
a lot of work.
Frustrated by this every single day. So,
but it's old hat to you. You're like, oh, it's this. You do this, so you do this, so you do this. And for other, people who are listening, even myself, it's like, okay, it's still new, still in that earlier stages where you've now got that pattern down. But what is it that really gets you excited about this? Like, what gets you just like really jazzed about what it is that you're doing?
I think it's really potential. I love learning things. I like learning complex strategies, complex solutions to problems, and distilling them down into its simplest form so that they can then scale. Because for myself, I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not a math genius. It takes me a long time to figure things out because I'm working on distilling it down to its simplest form for myself. And that's what allows me to be able to share it with other people, is I have to break it down into those simple processes so I can understand it. And then once I can understand it at a simple level, then I can figure out how does that scale? How can I do it better? How can I take that process and do it in a different way that other people have not looked at it before? And that's like what I'm talking about at a very high level is A/B testing. A/B testing's been around for a very long time. I didn't invent it. I just figured out a different way of using A/B testing to be able to scale and drive dramatic results.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things you mentioned in your book, speaking to that, is Tim Ferriss. And you talked about how he actually tested the cover and the title of his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, on using Facebook, which is...
I don't think he tested Facebook. I think he did AdWords at the time.
AdWords? Okay.
Yeah, Google AdWords. But it's amazing. Like there's a great case study story. I think it's in a book called Neuro Web Design, where they talk about a book, and this book was a while ago, and I don't remember the book, but they published a book and it wasn't selling at all. And all they did was swap out the cover with another cover, and then it went to the bestseller list.
Wow.
Like, that's where like just positioning and having the right hook point and testing that hook point can drive dramatic results. And that's actually the second book I'm working on right now, is all about how to establish a strong hook point to drive success in this new world that we live in. Because it's interesting that the smarter the people that I work with, the harder it is for them to distill down what they do in a very simple and easy to understand hook point that grabs people's attention, because we live in a micro attention world.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because they make it more complex. I'm guilty of that. But and the challenge also is, like, if you're good at a lot of things, it's kind of like when I work with clients, it's like they're good at a lot of things, it's deciding what's the one thing that they're great at. and choosing from all these options. Talk about, before we finish up here, talk about the global market. I know you mentioned it in your book. I would encourage all of our listeners to go get a copy of your book. Of course, it's fantastic. You unpack this in detail. You talk a little bit about the hook. You talk about, the target audience, all those different things in the book. But you also talk about the global market and the value of going beyond the Canadian market, US market, UK market. Talk about where that's at. And even since the book was written and released, if things have changed. You mentioned about India being a big market, and Brazil and some other markets that being really great to go there and build audiences.
Yeah, I'm still a huge believer in that. I mean, obviously I have to preface it by saying if you're a small business in a local market, or if you're a company that can only ship products in, a specific city or US, it doesn't make that much sense. But for the rest of us, there is a tremendous opportunity. I mean, I started off in the film industry, and 60 to 70% of box office is international. There's literally movies that bomb here that are saved by international box office. And there's so much more scale. I mean, I think we're at like 8 billion, close to 8 billion people in the world. And out of that, I think there's like 330, 350 million in the US. I may be off a little bit on those numbers, but it's close to that. And then you look at a market like India, there's 1.3 billion people in that country. And they project in the next 5 years, it's going to be the world's largest population. And a lot of people will say, oh, there's no value there, it's very poor. Well, actually, that middle class is rising very quickly. And if you look at the smartest people in the world, that's where they're investing, because that's where they see the scale. So Facebook's number one country is India. I think Instagram is right back up there. And I think even like India, Facebook only has like 300 million to 400 million users out of that market. If they can acquire the other billion users, then that's a third of their user base today. You have companies like a Coke or a Pepsi that have reached saturation points in the US, UK, Canada markets, so they have to go to other parts of the world. Google's putting hot air balloons above Africa because a third of the world's population is still not connected to the internet. So there's a tremendous amount of scale and opportunity there for the right types of brands and businesses. And there's not a lot of competition because not a lot of people are advertising in those markets or trying to acquire. So that's where you can drive a tremendous amount of scale and do it for a fraction of the cost that would do here. Again, it's not right for everybody, but I think that for certain brands, for certain individuals, it's very prudent for them to at least look into it and at least understand the opportunity. And then you can make the determination whether it's the right opportunity for you or not. But I can tell you there's probably a 2 or 3 year window right now where it's not going to be as competitive, but eventually everybody's going to catch on and really go after those markets.
Do you anticipate that there'll be additional, I mean, we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, Facebook and Instagram owns Instagram, we've got some big platforms, LinkedIn and so forth. Do you foresee that there's going to be new platforms that are going to come up and start to crowd that market out as well, or?
Potentially. I mean, I would say that I'm still very bullish on the major 4: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. They're not going away. Maybe one falls off, but I highly doubt it. I mean, really, if you want to look at, and this is the interesting thing about Facebook, is Facebook had to rebuild their entire platform. They did the same they did for Instagram in what they call light versions to work on the phone technology that they have in India, because most people in India can't afford an iPhone. So Android is a bigger player, and in the beginning it was more smartphones. So they had to design versions of their app that were less resource intensive to work on the technology there. And that's where you see those companies having success. Like another perfect case study is WhatsApp getting acquired for $17 billion from Facebook.
Yeah, that was mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's like, why were they so successful? Is because they went after the emerging markets. So they garnered market share in every place that Facebook didn't have it. And that's why it was so valuable to Facebook. And they went after markets that nobody was paying attention to and nobody was caring about. You look at Snapchat, and the downfall of Snapchat is they did not go after the international markets. They didn't see them as valuable, especially markets like India, Indonesia, Russia, South America. Like they were just focused on the US, Canada, certain parts of Europe. And I think that that really hurt their scale and growth of not getting that wide adoption.
Yeah, got it. Well, Brandon, thanks so much. I know there's so much more that you can share. It's in your book. You've got your next book coming out. People can follow you on social. We'll make sure all the links are in the show notes. And of course, for our listeners, you can go to book.1millionfollowers.com and it'll take you to the link so you can get a copy of Brendan's book. Thank you so much for just spending a few minutes here and sharing a little bit about your passion and your expertise. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So leaders of transformation take action. So take action today. Get a copy of Brendan's book. Go follow him. Watch what he's doing. You know, this social media is not going away and it's only getting greater, and the global markets are huge opportunities he just shared. So, you know what, learn about it. And one of the things that one of our recent guests talked about, who is into brain hacking, was talking about the fact that, you know, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Your brain is constantly evolving. There's neuroplasticity that is there. And so even those of you that are a little bit older and going, oh my gosh, I can't learn this stuff, I'm behind, you can learn this stuff. And there are people out there like Brendan who are teaching this and making it bringing the complex down to the simple. So get his book, take action on it, learn it, and it'll be well worth it for you to make a greater impact and get your message out there to a wider audience. So we encourage you to do that. We'd love to hear your story. You can go on leaderstransformation.com. You can find us on social as well. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders Transformation real soon.